Hi, I'm Chad with Move For a Guitar. This lesson is from our course, Music Theory 2. All the lessons for this course are free on YouTube, so you can follow right along with the playlist or look in the description below for links to the rest of the lessons. To accelerate your learning though, I highly recommend you download the corresponding Music Theory 2 workbook and eGuide. To learn more about the workbook and eGuide, click the link on the screen or look in the description below. Welcome to Music Theory 2, Lesson 5. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to find one note up and down your fretboard using octave shapes. So in the last lesson, we started looking at interval shapes, and in this lesson, we're going to go back and look at octave shapes. And octave shapes are really important on the guitar because they can help you find one note up and down the fretboard, which can help you memorize the fretboard, which is a big hurdle that a lot of guitarists face, and a lot of guitarists just try to skip it and don't memorize all the notes up and down their fretboard, which can actually really hinder you. So it's important to memorize the notes on your fretboard, and octave shapes are a really good way to start doing that. And along with being able to help you memorize the notes on your fretboard and understand how the fretboard is laid out, octave shapes are actually really musical in themselves. So here's an example of playing octave shapes by themselves in a musical situation, and it's probably a really familiar sound to you. So again, an octave is 6 whole steps apart, which is 12 half steps or 12 frets apart. You should know that really well by now. It's called a perfect octave or an 8, but we can just call it an octave. And it's when you start on any one note, go up 6 whole steps, you end up on the exact same note, and it's an octave higher in pitch. Has the same note name, but they're different pitches. So if we go back to the octave shapes, here's the first one that I showed you. And we're not worried so much about anything being a root or tonic for right now. So I'm just drawing everything in black. So what I'm going to do is start by showing you 6 really useful octave shapes. And you already saw 4 of them. And those 4 were the ones that I showed you in the last lesson when I showed you how to take the interval shapes and move them through all the string sets. So we'll start with this one, which has the notes on the 6th and 4th strings. And we're just going to call this Octave Shape One. And the names of these, as far as Octave Shape 1 and 2, don't matter that much. It's only what I call them, and it's going to help me just quickly explain what shapes we're using later in this lesson. But it's not necessarily what other people call them, so don't worry too much about the name of them as far as Octave Shape 1, Octave Shape 2. This is just what I use to make it easier to explain. So that's Octave Shape 1. If we go down towards the floor, we're on to Octave Shape 2, which has the notes on the 5th and 3rd string. Go down again, we're on Octave Shape 3, which has the notes on the 4th and the 2nd string. And then Octave Shape 4 is this one, which is the notes on the 3rd and 1st string. And these are all the shapes that I showed you in the last lesson when I was showing you how to move interval shapes through all the string sets. So Octave Shape 1, you start with your lowest note, you go down 2 strings towards the floor, and then you go up 2 frets. That's how you get this shape. So down 1, 2, up 2 frets. 1, 2. That's how you get Octave Shape 1. Octave Shape 2 is the exact same thing. Down 2 strings, up 2 frets. Octave Shape 3 changes up. You're still going down 2 strings, but now you have to go up 3 frets because of this note, which was on the 2nd string, moved up half a step. And then Octave Shape 4 is the same as Octave Shape 3. You're going down 2 strings towards the floor, up towards the body of your guitar, 3 frets. So you saw all of these already. That's how you count the strings or the frets if you forget what the shape actually looks like. The next one is going to look like this. And you'll notice I'm just taking one note and going down through all the strings right here. So the first one started on the 6th string, second one on the fifth, third on the fourth, fourth on the third. Now we're on the fifth, which is starting on the second string. That's just what's happening with these shapes. This one note, I'm just moving through all the strings. But to get the octave shape from starting on the second string, you start on the second string, now you go up 3 strings towards the ceiling and then up towards the body of your guitar 2 frets. So that's different than the other octave shapes. The other octave shapes we're starting with the lower note and then going down towards the floor strings. This one we're starting with the higher note and going up towards the ceiling 3 strings. And that would give you Octave Shape 5, and those notes are on the second and fifth string. And then Octave Shape 6 starts with the note on the first string, and this one you just go to the 6th string in the same fret. That gives you the next octave shape, Octave Shape 6. And like I've mentioned before, these are actually 2 octaves apart, which would actually be 24 frets apart if they were on the same string. So again, I'm just starting with the note on the 6th string for Octave Shape 1, note on the 5th string for Octave Shape 2, note on the 4th string for Octave Shape 3, note on the 3rd string for Octave Shape 4, note on the 2nd string for Octave Shape 5, and note on the 1st string for Octave Shape 6. That's just how you can visualize where these shapes are coming from. And you may be wondering why I showed you these shapes. For one, like I said, you can play these shapes and come up with cool sounds. Some of them are easier to play than others, but they're all really useful shapes. This one right here with 2 octaves apart isn't nearly as common to play as a shape, but it can be done and can create cool sounds, and different people have done it. But the main reason I want to show you this is because, like I said, it can help you memorize all the notes up and down your fretboard. And that's because if you were to start with any note, and we're just going to start with a note down here, just so we have room to move up the fretboard. But again, these are arbitrary notes. These shapes will stay the same no matter where I started on the fretboard. So if I started with a note right there, I can use my octave shapes to find that same note name. So for example, this is an F. It doesn't matter that this is an F because this works for any of the notes, but just giving you this as an example. I'm going to show you how to find all of the Fs up and down your whole fretboard now using octave shapes. If I started on a different note, if I started on G, I'd be showing you how to find all the Gs up and down your fretboard. And like I said, this is a really helpful way to start memorizing all the notes up and down your fretboard. So since we're starting with a note on the first string, we're going to use Octave Shape 6 to find the next note with the same name, which would be right there. Like I said, this is Octave Shape 6. When we're starting on the first string, you just go in the same fret to the note on the 6th string, and then you're going to end up with 2 octaves apart, but those are notes that are the same name. So if we are looking at the note names, these are both F notes. And now we can just continue this and start from this note and use our next octave shape that works and find our next closest F note. So starting with this note, we use Octave Shape 1 because this is on the 6th string, and Octave Shape 1 had the note starting on the 6th string. Now here is our next note with the same name. Then to find our next closest note, we start on this note, use our next octave shape that works, and since we're starting on the 4th string, we're going to use Octave Shape 3, and that would give us our next closest note with the same name. Now we start on this note, and since that's on the 2nd string, we use Octave Shape 5 to find our next closest note, and that would give us our next closest note with the same name. Now we start here, and since this is on the 5th string, we use Octave Shape 2. That gives us our next closest note with the same name. Now we're on string 3, so we use Octave Shape 4, and that gives us our next closest note with the same name. So using those octave shapes, just starting on one note, I was able to find all the notes with the same name all the way to here. So, like I said, these are F notes, but that's not important. This would work no matter what notes these were. These shapes would stay the same, but these are F notes the way I've drawn them on the fretboard. So that means all of these notes right here that are drawn on the fretboard are F notes, and they're the only F notes from here to here. There's no F notes anywhere else that I haven't drawn on the screen within this part that I've circled. And I found all of those using octave shapes. And now there's obviously more room up here that I can go. And depending on your fretboard, I've only drawn this to 18 frets. If you have an electric guitar, you probably have more frets, even up to 24 frets. So you can go farther than I'm going to show you, but it doesn't matter because all you do is start reusing the information from down here. So since I'm on the first string, I use that same shape that I used right here, and I'm just going to start repeating everything. So that would give me my next closest note right here. That's Octave Shape 6 again. And then again, I'm on the sixth string, which is where I was right here. So I just use this shape again, and it just repeats itself. And again, and that's as far as I can go with what I have drawn on the screen with this fretboard. And this right here is just a repeat of this. And hopefully you know that from Music Theory 1 course, that's because everything that happens from the 12th fret up is what's happening from the open strings to the 12th fret. So this note and this note are always the same, just an octave apart going this way. So go back and watch that lesson when I talk about the fretboard layout if that's confusing to you. But either way, you can see that it's just using the same octave shapes because I'm on the same strings when I do it. So right here, I'm using Octave Shape 6 because I used it here, and both of these were starting on the first string. So now, with the fretboard diagram that I have drawn, like I said, your fretboard will probably go higher if you have an electric guitar. These are all of the F notes up and down the whole fretboard. There's no other F notes on this fretboard that I haven't drawn. So here it is on the guitar. If I start on any note starting on the first string, I'm just going to start way down here on the farthest note that I can get towards my headstock on the first string, which is an F note. Since I'm on the first fret, I use Octave Shape 6. So first string, first fret, stay in that same fret and go to the sixth string. That's my next note. And since this is an F note, this is an F note as well. So now I'm on the sixth string with this F note. I use Octave Shape 1. So that's my next closest F note. So now I'm on the fourth string. I use Octave Shape 3. That's my next closest F note. So now I'm on the second string. I use Octave Shape 5. That's my next closest F note. Now I'm on the fifth string. I use Octave Shape 2. That's my next closest F note. Now I'm on the third string. I use Octave Shape 4. That's my next closest F note. Now I'm back on the first string, so everything just repeats. Just like it was down here. So you can see this can be a way to start quickly memorizing where all the notes on your fretboard are. You just take one note, and then using octave shapes, you can find that same note up and down the whole fretboard. And in the practice section of this lesson, I'm going to give you a game that you can play that'll actually help you to do that and make it fun to do. And so those are all the octave shapes, but of course, if you're on the same strings, these are octaves as well. Any place that you have one note and go up 6 whole steps or 12 frets, that's an octave as well. So from this note to this note is an octave, just like from this note to this note is an octave. And that's because this note and this note are unison notes, which I'll talk about more in the next lesson. And again, like I said, I started on F notes just so I could have the whole fretboard diagram to draw on. But if I was to move this anywhere, if I move this up a half a step and was on F sharp or G flat, these shapes stay the exact same. Everything's just moving along with it. So you could use these exact same shapes to find any note no matter where you're starting. And I'll explain that more in the practice section of how that actually works. And there's more information in your eGuide too. But for now, just realize that using these octave shapes, you can find one note up and down the fretboard. Doesn't matter what note you start on, the shapes will always stay the same. So that's more on octave shapes and how they can help you find notes up and down the fretboard. In the next lesson, I'm going to talk about unison shapes. Look in your Music Theory 2 workbook for step-by-step guidance on how to retain this information and what to do next. And remember, all the charts and diagrams for this lesson are in your Music Theory 2 eGuide for you to reference at any time.